So one of the challenges that people brought up is the idea that, okay, well, if I make the presentation interactive, then I actually have to respond to the learners, and maybe they're going to want me to go in a particular direction that I'm not prepared for. So Dan and I threw ourselves at your mercy in the survey that we sent out in advance, and we asked what you most wanted to learn about. And so this is an actual unscripted, clickable navigation slide where we could go in any of these 4 directions. And based on the survey that we did in advance of this presentation, but we could also load up and do one right now to do the same thing, the majority of people said that they were particularly interested in learning about Poll Everywhere, and so we're going to go there first. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some concepts, and then Dan's going to talk about the execution. So we heard briefly in the keynote as well about the idea of the flipped classroom, where you flip the usual order of a knowledge giving session so that you do more of the transmission early on, whether that's through a concept video or through reading or something like that, and then have people come into the classroom or the large group presentation setting to be able to do ideally more interactivity. And so you all had a mini version of this if you were able to go ahead and watch the video that I sent out about the flipped classroom. So now we are here to apply that knowledge into a particular context. And the idea is that within the classroom, if you've already done the sort of information dump in the pre-work, then in the classroom you can be potentially more interactive, and the role of the teacher also changes. So instead of delivering information, they may be able to help learners work through particular applications, surface and correct misconceptions, things like that, and interact more with the group. The flipped classroom isn't by any means synonymous with Poll Everywhere. It's just one way that you can be more interactive in that classroom setting. And Poll Everywhere is just one example of an audience response system. There's also the clickers, and there's other ones out there, but this is the one we use. So why to use it? We'll always ask this question about all the technologies that we talk about. Why would one use it? And I think we all know intuitively that engagement in a typical lecture is maybe not so great, particularly the longer you go. And so this is one way to just get that level of engagement back up, as many of you said in the initial survey. And then also the idea of being able to reflect on and then generate in response to the content. So reflection could be just how well did you understand what I just said, which was sort of the fist of 5 that I did, or it could be application. So this is just one example from a CME course in child neurology where we were talking about ADHD pharmacology and presented a particular case vignette and asked the audience, what would you do next? So you can see that about 50% chose option C, but there was a pretty good spread between D and E. And this really gives the speaker an opportunity to see, A, did they understand the concepts? And maybe if the only correct answer was C, maybe that tells me as the speaker, okay, I'm going to need to go back and spend more time on that because only 50% chose C. Or maybe what I would do is C, but there's a compelling argument for E. And so maybe that's the opportunity to open it up and say, well, why might people choose to do one or the other? Turn and talk to a partner. Let's debate the pros and cons of each of these. And then maybe D is actually a really common misconception that I want to make sure to address head on, because 21% of people still think D. I'm not saying that that's true in this case, but you get the idea. So maybe those 21% are actually the learners I most need to target because they're still, retaining this idea that is not actually accurate, or, something like that. And then finally, Poll Everywhere can be used for adaptability. So as I said, we asked you all to tell us where would you like to go in today's workshop by voting beforehand with Poll Everywhere, or we could do it right now. We could ask, should we now spend some time on demonstrating how to use Poll Everywhere? But we're not going to, because my guess is the answer is yes. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Unless the answer is no, in which case we can go on. So I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. I should start by saying the Department of Medical Education has one Poll Everywhere account. So if you want to use that account, we're happy to give you the login and password for it. But you do need to kind of coordinate with us and make sure that somebody else isn't using the account at the time that you want to use it. On the other hand, if you're large group that you're presenting to is less than 40 people, you can sign up and register for your own free account, which gives you full functionality of the platform. So it's only when you get above 40 that you really need to use the DME account. So I'm logged in here with the Department of Medical Education account. You can see this is kind of like the management area. These are all the various polls that have been created. You have all the several options up here to group and ungroup and run reports on your polls or delete and edit your questions. To create, you click the create question button, and you'll see an impressive, what I find an impressive assortment of questions. I haven't actually looked at all these different question types, but there's multiple choice, word cloud, clickable images, survey you saw, which is what we used, open-ended questions. So a lot of different options there. And then you would simply add your question stem and your answer choices. I won't go through that now. I'll bring up one I've already created. So this was, well, anyone, I don't know. So, oh, wow, that was a bad one to bring up, but anyway.
That was my response.
Just a couple of things to highlight here, which is if you have show results turned on, your results will show dynamically. So if that was a bad choice, let me go back to a multiple choice question. Okay, where's the soccer one? Soccer team, thank you. You will more likely if you're doing multiple choice, you want to have the show results turned off, because you don't want to bias the responses as they see the responses being generated. Others like word clouds or the survey that we sent, you might want to see dynamically the responses coming in. So that's an option. That's what the response would look like. So you would see these percentages being dynamically generated. Do note that you do have to activate your poll when you're ready to use it. That essentially publishes it. You want to test it before you go out to the event with it. So there you can see that active generation of the response. And then when you are ready to present, there's a couple of different ways to do that. There is, let me go here and just show you this quick little video. So there is a plugin that you download from the Poll Everywhere site if you want to embed it in a PowerPoint slide. And what that does is it puts this Poll Everywhere option in your PowerPoint toolbar. And the sub menu there are these Poll Everywhere choices where you can insert a slide, a Poll Everywhere question. And you would need to log in through PowerPoint. So I will show you that. So here we are selecting Poll Everywhere. We're now get the sub menu. We click on the activity. I was already logged in this case, and it gives you now the Poll Everywhere interface, the management area with all. And then you select your poll and it plops it into the slide. So that is one way, and there it is plopped into the slide. That's one way. The other way you saw for responding, you can just give people the text information to text their answers. You can give them the URL to go to a web page. And there is also a mobile app for Poll Everywhere that people can download, iOS or Android. The reporting, I don't know if any of you have actually used Poll Everywhere. You might know the reporting better than I do. I can see, it looks like there's some very good reporting options. I haven't actually used it very much.
So I used it both for this session where we looked to see, okay, well, what are people interested in focusing on out of our 4 topics in that sort of cloverleaf? And then I also just gave a presentation, for instance, at our department meeting today, where I asked a survey and I was able to just view by clicking survey results, you know, X number of people said this or that or the other thing. So it just spits out that information into, for instance, an Excel file for you.
Okay. So we talked about gotchas. Connectivity is always a gotcha when you're using live real-time applications, right? So if you're presenting at a hotel or something, you always want, even at the Harvard Medical School, we've had a bear of a time working with the neurology group. There's a grand rounds there that the room is really bad with Wi-Fi. So we've been trying to Zoom them. It's been a real problem. So you need to kind of check that out ahead of time. The plugin installation I mentioned, just be aware that if you install that on your version of PowerPoint on your local machine, when you go to present on someone else's machine, if they don't have it plugged in, then have the plugin installed, then you would be pretty much dead in the water there if you were going to use the embed method. Polleverywhere.com versus pollev.com. Pollev is the display web address. Polleverywhere is where you would log in to do your account management and set up polling questions. And then also remember about the shared account. So if you do use the DME account, happy to have you do so, but just make sure you coordinate with us. This is another reflection point for us. I'm going to just step outside here and talk about PowerPoint presentations in particular, that the department is kind of promote this idea of segmenting your presentations into conceptual chunks or topics. So with each topic or segment, we're promoting the idea of a overview of that segment and then a summary of that segment. So just modeling that here, here's our summary that, again, Polleverywhere can help with engagement, promote engagement through reflection and generation of learning to make it less passive, make it a more active learning experience, and then help you adapt to your learner needs and priorities as you both engage with, but then learn from their responses. We mentioned connectivity as being a problem. These applications, do take some time to become familiar enough to really kind of leverage all the power of them. I mentioned I haven't gotten into the reporting yet, so it does take some time to become familiar enough that you're really leveraging all the power of the applications. That's always a cost overhead. And when you present, you might want to have some technical support backup so that the inevitable things that will go wrong. So it's always good to have an extra hand on hand.